Well, good morning on this beautiful day. Wanted to share a little bit, this is Michael here, wanted to share a little bit about pressure, right? Pressure. I also wanted to share a little bit about movement. I was having a conversation with a friend the other night, and he used the analogy which struck me really interesting of a hamster wheel. And what struck me so interesting about that is it's the same analogy that I ended up landing on. But he had an extra piece to his hamster wheel. And he mentioned that, you know, what you and I both learned as he was talking to me, he said was that movement, we knew movement was necessary, but we thought that we were moving forward. We thought that if we just kept at it, things would get better, right? Now, we were talking about relationships we had with other people. So there's a difference when you have more than yourself involved in whatever you're trying to do. We've all experienced that, right? Whether it's in romantic relationships, whether it's in business, any type of interpersonal relationship that you have, right? And he was talking about how the hamster wheel, when it comes around, every time it comes around, right? It's like you're running this hamster wheel. You don't know you're on the hamster wheel, for one, okay? And every time the hamster wheel comes around, though, you're running, you're moving, you're moving, you're moving, you're moving. You feel like you're going forward. And yet, as the hamster wheel goes around, you're like, oh, there's that thing again. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, there it is again. Oh, there it is again. And you start recognizing the patterns. And that's the thing I've always recognized. Or that's the way that we recognize, is there something in life that needs to be addressed? Either in a good way or a bad way, right? It will show up in patterns. But you have to be able to see and recognize the patterns for yourself. And what both him and I recognized was we were on a hamster wheel. We felt like we were moving. We felt like we were doing everything under the sun that could possibly be done. And in some sense of reality, we were. But in order to fuel our continual movement on this hamster wheel, we were pulling all of that energy from ourselves to support and sustain the relationship that we had got ourselves into with other people. We weren't recognizing the fact that there wasn't real contribution on their side, real reciprocation on their side. In fact, every now and then, they would just take, more than every now and then, they would just take a big stick and jam it right in the hamster wheel so that, you know, your legs would get knocked out from under you and you had to pick yourself up, brush yourself off, get back on and start going again. Try to build momentum again. And I used to think maybe that this was not so long ago, it's maybe a few years ago. I used to think that external pressure from the outside, because the things that got me to change my life were simply I couldn't take anymore in here. But all of those pressures that was creating this havoc in here were coming from the outside. What I didn't realize at the time was that all of those external chaos that was happening out here, I had a significant part in creating because of a bunch of subconscious, unconscious things going on within me here. Therefore, because these things were going on, it created a certain dynamic. It's why I was attracted to certain people over other people, right? Because whatever this thing was that was churning within me needed something that matched, right? Because that's what I was used to. I was used to chaos. So I'm going to revert this back a little bit to the pressure. The things that got me to change in life was the pressure, and the pain of life became too great. And it was like you either continue to get more of this or you change. So you had this pressure to get away from, like, I can't do this anymore, right? Whatever all this is, whatever's going on back here, however that's created, which at the time I didn't know, I just knew I can't do this anymore. Everything keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse. I do recognize I'm the common denominator in all of this. It doesn't mean it's all my fault or anything of that nature. It does mean I have some responsibility in creating it, yes. But all of this back here, the pressure, and had that external force in order to get, in order to get me moving in the right direction, not just moving on a hamster wheel over and over and over, not getting anywhere and wondering why nothing is ever changing. And it became so clear to me after I got out on my own. It's like, oh my God, I've been on a hamster wheel, just going around and around. I didn't even recognize it. No wonder why I haven't been able to build the life I want. No wonder why I haven't gotten where I wanted to get in life. And if you are trying to build something, but you have linked yourself with someone who's not interested in building anything, you got a real problem. One of the things that really, helped me get myself back on track was the fact that I had denied so many things for myself for so long. And when things hit the fan in some of the fashion that they did, it made me so angry that I was saying, I'm going to do something for myself for once. For years, I'd wanted to get back into martial arts. I'd been in martial arts when I was a teenager, and wanted to get back into that. But life, all the responsibilities, etc. Let's face it, when you're running a hamster wheel that is never ending chaos all the time, you don't have room for anything else, right? Well, in the midst of all this chaos, when it really, really blew up, I was like, okay, I don't care what chaos is going on around me. I have got to do something for me. And so I searched for an ninjutsu instructor, and I found the instructor that I still have 10 years later now. And it's one thing, people look at martial arts like, why do you want to learn how to fight? And there's a saying that says it's better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener in a war, right? The truth is, there's really no war outside of ourselves if there's not a war inside of ourselves. It's an old African proverb. There can be no war externally if there is no war internally. Fact is, I had a war going on inside me I'd had for most of my life going on inside of me. And the pressures of the things going on, because what's in here ends up getting painted upon the canvas of life externally, right? And getting into martial arts was a way for me to focus. It was a way for me to channel. It was a way for me to have pressure. The pressure was all this, like, I can't go back here. I have to go forward somehow. And for whatever reason, martial arts is calling me again. Like, I got to do something to feel like I'm headed in the right direction, to feel like I'm not continually on this hamster wheel. And so I did. And the great thing is that we need pressure. I came to a point a few years back where I thought, well, we must not need any pressure from the outside then, But that's not true. Even in our martial arts practice, we can't train in exact real life scenarios because you would hurt you'd hurt your training partner, right? And you don't want to just go through it like namby-pamby, half-assed, you know, because then you're not really getting the benefit of it. So you create a pressurized environment. You create an environment when you're practicing certain things that says, you know, you create artificial pressure, basically. You get as close to as real as you can get, you know, where you know you're not going to injure the other person or something like that during your training. You create a certain amount of pressure, right? And that gives the dynamic then that you want to practice this drill or this exercise or whatever it is within that container. And we need these containers. Sometimes, like in martial arts there, we have to create our own pressure. Right? We have to take our mind and put ourselves in a situation where we say, okay, this is for real. You got to really picture this. Sometimes you might even set up a scene or something like that just to help your mind get involved, just to help your mind create this environment that says, okay, you know, we're not just practicing this right now. We got to execute it within this container that's been constructed, you know, that will provide some pressure for us to be able to execute it a little bit harder, a little bit stronger, have more of ourselves involved in that. And sometimes we need to do that in real life. The one thing that I've noticed in life is, as I have finally created a life of peace, because my internal world is at peace now. And it doesn't mean that I don't have questionings and wonderings and periods or moments of confusion or disorientation or anything like that. But I know how to resolve them. I know that a lot of resolution comes from letting go and being and getting out of the mind, getting out of the rational thinking and getting into the heart, so you can bridge spirit and physical. You can bridge higher and lower consciousness together, and you get into a place of being. What does all this have to do with pressure? As many of you, as I mentioned before in some of my videos, left work in October 2025, not as retirement, but as a sabbatical. I had some things I wanted to get done. I went and did those things, experienced those things. Stopped speaking, stopped teaching Tai Chi. I let everything go because that was what was necessary at the time. And I had an epiphany last night realizing that I know I'm in an area where a new map is being created, right? When you're working, there's a lot of pressure that comes from work, whether you feel it or not. I had people that said to me after I'd been out of work for a couple months, 2-3 months, they were like, you look so much better, you know? And I didn't realize how much of a toll work takes on me. And it's true for everybody, right? There's that pressure there to, you know, the mantra is do more with less, which is another whole video, right, on the ridiculousness of that. But as I've gone through this time period, I've recognized that this is a gestation period, right? I'm wanting something new to come, some new way to move forward. And it doesn't mean I can't go back and do some of the same work that I've done before, you know? That's not off the table or anything. But I also know I want to do more. And so I'm in a gestation period of seeing what opportunities could come my way, what may grow out of this. And the thing I recognized yesterday is lots of times I way, way, way underestimate gestation periods. Right? The things that I thought I would be able to heal in my life in 2 years after I left my marriage and stuff, my timetable was like 2 years, man. I'll be this and that and everything else under the sun. Well, it probably took me 6 to 8 years to get to a place where I could really start feeling secure, really start feeling like the old has passed and the new has come. Same type of things when I went through cancer stuff. When I was all done with it, I kept telling myself, all right, after my final surgery and stuff, I'll have 10 weeks, and because that's what the doctors are telling me. You can't lift anything like more than a milk jug for the next 10 weeks, that type of stuff. And then, okay, give me another, let's say 8 weeks or so. So let's say 3, maybe max 4 months, and I'll just be back to 100%. Well, that wasn't even close. It took more like 3 years. And I still have days and things where my body is not quite sure what it's doing. These are external things that we can't control, right? These gestation periods, a gestation period is the gestation period. That's it. We don't get to control it, right? When God, the universe, etc., is in the process of creating something new, when something new is being born, when something new is being put together, it takes time. And in this period, the way that this ties into pressure is in this period of time, I find myself with very, very little pressure. I have a wide open schedule. I have enough money to not worry about things for the most part. And there's no pressure, which means on certain things, if I want to continue forward in my life, I have to create that pressure, right? And the reason I bring this up is because I've been looking a lot at, I think, Romans 12:2 lately, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And there's another verse that says, set your mind on things above, things which are lovely and pure and this and that. And there's verse after verse after verse that talks about, which I've always known, but which talks about it's your responsibility. You are the one that has to set your mind where you want it to go, to set that intent. I'm the one that has to come out here in the morning and say, I want to go for a walk. And you know what? I'm going to do some martial arts practice in the middle of my walk today. I'm the one that has to create the pressure for that. Sure, I can just do it and go through the motions and say, good enough, But I have a responsibility to say, no, why are you practicing it? Don't just go through the motions, right? Put yourself into it. Create pressure for that. Practice it as though it is real. Create that pressure for yourself. And you know what? Every time I do that, it feels really, really great. But I have to create that pressure from in here by saying, I am going to take and create this container right now, this container of pressure that says, you know what, maybe I don't feel like practicing that right now. It is quite enjoyable just walking along and listening to the birds. But I have to find that place within that says, yes, you can enjoy that. And you also want these other things in life, which requires practice, which requires me setting my mind on those things, creating a pressure environment for those things, not just going through the emotions of those things. Becoming immersed in it in that moment. And the great thing is, whenever I do that and put those types of things in place, I come out feeling more charged in a good way, positively charged, like, yeah, that felt great. For those of you who like maybe work out, maybe you run, maybe you do some workout at home, maybe you go to the gym, whatever it is, you have to do that, right? I know there's some people that go to the gym and they'll just, they'll run on the treadmill or do whatever, and they're reading a magazine while they're doing that, and that's good. But those who don't read, who actually just focus and put their mind into what they're doing as well, rather than having physical bodies trying to do this thing and your mind is focused on reading this thing. They've actually done studies that show that those who are immersed in it and put their mind in it, they're not reading, they're not doing other things while they're trying to work out like that, that those people have greater benefits in their workout. The other thing that, so I used to think that all pressure, what I'm saying about all this is, I used to think that, what do you do if you don't have external pressure out here? What if you don't have the pain of life anymore forcing you to change because you know you can't live this way anymore, right? What do? Well, you have to create your own pressure. You have to set your mind on something and say, that's where I'm going. And yes, I'm going to be open enough to allow for the flow of ideas and the flow of everything, because that's the way life works. You always want to remain in the flow. But you also have to set some direction, have to create some pressure. Maybe you have to put a time limit on something that you're doing, or that you're, like a goal. I'm going to have this done by this date, something like that. You have to create the artificial pressure, just like we create the artificial pressure when we practice in martial arts. Life's not going to do everything for you. It can, because sometimes we need the kick in the pants to get us, going in the right direction. And sometimes we have to be the ones kicking ourselves to get ourselves to move in the right direction. It is that simple, right? The whole thing of no one's coming to save you, that's true in a lot of senses. It is your responsibility. Somebody may reach down their arm to help you up, right? But you still got to put a lot of effort in. You got to actually reach your arm up and say, yeah, okay, I'm ready for something different. You have to be the one making the change. You have to be the one saying, I'm going to go forward. And you have to be aware and be recognizing, are there patterns repeating in your life? Because if there are certain patterns repeating in your life, it means that you are in part on a hamster wheel of some sort, going round and round, and that's why the pattern, here's that pattern, oh, there's that thing again, there's that thing, it keeps showing up, something keeps showing up. In my life, it kept showing up. It was with different faces in different places, yes, true, but the pattern was there. And it became undeniable. If you haven't, it is a beautiful day. It's a little too hot for me in the afternoon lately when it's getting into the mid and upper 80s. But thankfully in the morning here, it's a nice mid to upper 60s. Great time to get outside. Make sure you get outside. Enjoy some fresh air and nature. Remember, pretty much everything you need is within. Blessings and love to each of you.